All right. So, trying to do lives when possible. Today, supposed to have a D&D campaign, and the D&D campaign ended up getting canceled due to players not being able to show up. For the session, so I figured I would do a live instead. As I sit here with my, hey Clea, my dog decides she wants to come up and say hi. Hello. How are you? What you doing? As I get distracted. Hi. Can I do my live and then we'll go play? Yeah. Then we'll go play. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna come up to say hi, and you're gonna be the star of the show. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, look, dog!" Instead of talking about religious fanatics. There is. Lately, I've been having some conversations in some of the lives that I've done, and I've talked about the fact that some people have been attacking and targeting Christians. And obviously, I'm not a Christian. Well, not religious at all. In fact, I'm spiritual. If I was going to call myself anything, I would call myself a spiritual individual. And one of the main reasons that I do that is I kind of have a personal feeling about religion as a whole, that all religion is the same. It's all made up interpretations. There's something. I believe there's something. And what is actually there is kind of left up for debate. And I think as humans, we will go with nicknames of what we want to call it. God, goddess, gods, the force, energy, nature. But we don't know what it is. Any of the names that have been given to us throughout history for individual deities, I believe, are our interpretations of aspects of divinity that we just don't understand. The problem comes... Hey, Jay Wood Wolf, welcome. Fadista, good to see you. Hey, Blaze from SW, Florida. Hey, how's it going? So, getting distracted by dogs here and trying to get into a serious conversation about religious fanatics. I wanted to acknowledge that even though I mentioned that I think people need to stop attacking Christians. Hey, Dusty Dud, good to see you. A lot of people are. I'm trying to pet my dog here, so I'm like leaning while I talk here into the microphone. I'm leaning over here to pet my dog at the same time because she wants attention. I'm gonna have to go play with her right after this live. Topic discussion: fanatics. I was talking about the fact that I don't think it's fair to attack Christians. A lot of people are attacking Christians. It's become socially acceptable in the United States to attack Christians for their religious beliefs and morals and how they think about the world and life. And I mentioned the fact that I don't think this is fair. I don't think any group should be attacked for their religious viewpoints. I don't care who it is. And I mentioned the fact that I feel like a lot of people, for the most part, that are Christian are good people. Some of the best people I know are Christian. But then I was thinking more about it. And with this recent stuff that's been going on over there in Pakistan and Israel, some of the atrocities people are doing in the name of religion, it made me think that a topic talking about religious fanaticism and its dangers, not only for the individual doing it, but especially the people that they're affecting with their zealot-like focus on their spirituality, I think is dangerous as a whole to society. And it made me realize that some of the people that have complained about Christians are not complaining about the average Christian that's just Christian. They're complaining about the Christian that target them for not being Christian. And it's sad but true. There are people who are pagan, polytheistic, heathen, spiritual, non-Christian period, and they get targeted by Christians. Not all Christians do this. This is not a Christian thing. It's not like, oh, Christians must go out and target individuals who are not following their religion and faith. But there are some groups that are like that. You have some groups that are protesting anything that has to do with stuff that is outside of their religious scope and view. And this can be dangerous, especially when they get physically violent over it. We have had historical past with society where Christians have targeted and burned, tortured, and harmed people for not being of the right faith, even if they're Christian also. There was huge fights in England between Protestants and Catholics. how they go about practicing and worshiping the same deity. One content creator actually made a comment. Careful. I'm going to move my chair. Okay. Made a comment on the fact that one of the complaints that people have is talking about how bad Muslims, I don't know how to say the word properly, how bad Muslims are supposed to be because, they target other people, non-believers, infidels, and they have to wipe them from the earth. And Christians have a tendency to really target them for this. Well, this person was mentioning the fact that technically the Christians are worshiping the same God as the Muslims are. And this will piss off and trigger a lot of Christians that don't think about the bigger view on it. The argument that they brought up was the fact that the language... Look at you knocking my stuff down. The language that Jesus of Nazareth spoke in was some form of like Aramaic type of a language. And if you look in the language, the Hebrew language or the Islamic language, I don't know all of the languages, what Aramaic languages they were, but basically the way the word God is written in the Bible, it's not God, it's the God, and the way it's written is Allah or Yallah, depending on if it's Hebrew or whatever the other one was. Like I said, I'm not very versed in this stuff, but it was bringing up the point that the original Bible, if there was an original Bible, because there's so many different versions, you can go to BibleGate.com or different websites and you can see like multiple, even in English alone, there's like 20, 30 different versions of the Bible, but basically it's the same core thing. And if you look back in the Crusades in the Middle Ages, people were fighting and killing in the name of their deity, and so the Christians were doing all of these horrible things too that they accuse a lot of the modern folks of doing as well. We don't typically see today religious crusades. We don't see people going out of their way and starting wars, but how many wars and how many people have been hurt, slaughtered, and killed and maimed and tortured in the name of religion? There has been more death and violence in history, it seems like, in the name of religion than any other cause I know of. And maybe that's not 100% fact, but looking back to a lot of these wars that have happened, they seem to be somewhere around culture, religion, land, and property. And I think those are like the big three. That's why people start wars, and they're willing to die over this stuff. And it all comes down to religious fanaticism. People can take any religion or spirituality they want, and they can take it to different levels. You will find people on a regular basis, and this is one of the reasons why I get a really big problem when people targeting Christians, because a lot of people that I know, friends and family, are Christian, and they're good people, but they're not fanatics. They don't care what you do. They just want to believe what they believe and be left alone. And that's something that I can respect, and that's one thing that I would encourage others to do as well, is just leave people alone and stop going after them. But you see these fanatics in varying degrees throughout all of society, through every society. You have people getting violent with people here in the U.S. for not being Christian. And then you have this recent tragedy happening, like unspeakable horrors in these streets that are, it's unfathomable to think of this happening in modern society, but it does. And it's all because people are so focused that they think that what they believe is right, that they're willing to cause harm over it. And that takes you from a realm of transcended spiritual awareness and enlightenment to a realm of being a dangerous and violent person, all because of belief, all because of something that you can't prove. You can't tell me that you know. You believe in whatever it is you have based upon what was shown to you or taught to you or you were raised with, but you don't know. Sometimes I think it's about land grabs and wealth, with religious division being a front for the real goal, money, power, etc. It could be very possible. But in that case, it's like, why are they attacking the people to take the land if they're all living in that space? Like, they're attacking them for being different in some way, shape, or form, whether that be culturally, they're different people, they speak a different language, they worship a different deity, or they worship the same deity in a different way. Again, just from my observations of history, I think that's the reason I'm bringing this topic up. Is I think this is the biggest complaint that people have. It's not so much that someone's a different religion and spirituality, or that Christianity is the big one. Because if you look at the way Christianity is here in the U.S., it varies. It varies from church to church, from person to person, to state, how people go about approaching it. I have heard Christians speak about their religion and their spirituality in a way that sounds like the way pagans speak, neo-pagans speak about their religion and spirituality. Look at someone like the Appalachian people, the people that live out in nature. Now, they look at it as being created by God and a gift from God, but it's like if you change the words used to describe creation and what God is, I mean, does the view and vision of God match everyone who calls themselves Catholic, for example? Or is there some variance? And I think it depends on how church focused they are and study focused they are. But why are we taking this? Why we as in a society, as people, why are human beings taking their belief in something? They're being told it, right? You go to church, you go read a book, you get to a group or congregation, you are told what to believe. And you read that source and reference that is shared with you. And if there's an argument or dispute, the religious leaders of that organization tell you what's right and wrong. And anyone who doesn't follow that now is they're either evil, they're going to hell. There's accusations, there's violence, and that violence can escalate to these insane levels. To me, spirituality has always been about obtaining awareness and enlightenment and spiritual growth for yourself. It's an inward journey of looking at your interconnection with what's around you. And I've heard this mindset, because you learn it from places, right? Heard this mindset used in spiritual philosophy around the world. You know, you have some of these Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist type of practices that have this openness and this awareness and this looking within. You see this in indigenous traditions. You see this in Scandinavia. You see this in some of the Christians that live out in the woods that aren't attending regular churches. They have a Bible at home, but their true church is being out in nature. And again, that there's a resonance to that. What point did we have to move from being so focused on what other people are doing that it disrupts how our own spiritual growth is going? What also has been really blowing my mind lately is I've been seeing a lot of this talk over the recent things that have happened. And there are people who are supporting these horrible acts of terror that have gone on around the world. And even on a smaller scale, when you see people who are pushing out non-Christians from communities in violent manners, people will support those violent actions. It's acceptable all of a sudden. I think as a human being, as a society, we should condemn and reject any attempt to assert any sort of an authority over spiritual beliefs, religion, or practices, unless those practices are causing actual physical harm. And I get stuck on that, because when I say harm of any kind, there is the debate and the argument where people will be like, oh, but these religious practices are causing spiritual or mental harm. You are harming the child or the adult by brainwashing them into believing whatever BS you believe in. That's a hard conversation, but I'm trying to draw the line somewhere as of this conversation, that physical movement to violence, to end someone, to harm someone physically, we shouldn't. And we shouldn't be okay with it. And we should absolutely speak up against it, about it, and say no. As a society, as a whole, I think we should put our differences aside for a moment and agree on what is acceptable human interaction. I don't know. I don't know. That's the topic for today. That's what I thought might be worth discussing and bringing up. And of course, feel free to jump into the comments and share your thoughts as well as you have been. But I just wanted to put some more focus on the fact that I don't really think it's acceptable for any person to get so fanatical and so focused on what they truly think is right. I'm seeing this in the pagan community a lot, where people are fighting with other pagans and they're arguing and they're getting very violent with each other. It's all verbal, but it's still not acceptable. It's nowhere near as bad as some of the things that have been going on in the world right now, but it's an unnecessary aggression towards fellow folks over something you have no idea if it's real or not. People argue over the pronunciation of the names of the deities, or what you're allowed to do or shouldn't do, or what label or title that you need. And at what point does it become more about wearing a label and showing yourself in a certain light than it becomes about your own personal experience? And I keep going back to that personal experience, because what else does spirituality offer you other than this inner peace and guidance? What else are you trying to get out of it? I mean, are you, if you're not trying to get a relationship with whatever created us or whatever divinity is out there, or you're not trying to look for your own place in the universe, what are you even turning to religion for? What do you even believe in, and why do you believe in it? Period. For me, I can't comprehend what else it could be. No. The more I read from any of these books and read spirituality, whether it be actual established spirituality or new age reconstruction stuff, I keep coming back to the same question of, how do they know? I've read a lot of books over the years on spell work and magic and ritual, and okay, so why does it work? I mean, to me, science and magic are pretty much hand in hand the same thing. All of the old individuals that we would have called some form of spellcaster, magic individual, wise individual, that's what became modern science. You know, even with science, when you can prove something scientifically, it's like it's proven until you can't prove it anymore, you can disprove it. They're all theories that you try to back up with repeatable data. You don't have that with the belief of some sort of being or creator. If you are using just energy vibration, I'm sure there will eventually be some way to measure the energy that comes out of a ritual or a spell. I'm sure there's some methods that could be used to argue that you can prove that there's energy coming out of a ritual or a spell. But where did the original idea behind those come from? How did these people tap into these proper way of speaking or focusing your thoughts or attentions, or if you're using candles or herbs? Why are you using this stuff? Most of it is symbolic of cultural experiences that people have shared as a group and as a community. And that's why I feel like there's such a close connection with religion and culture. I was talking... Oh, Fadista's saying something. There is a general lack of maturity in society that colors everything. One would hope spiritual practice would improve this, though often the immaturity ego affects the spiritual practice. Very well said. Completely agree with you. Ego seems to rule a lot of people, especially when they get in large groups. I've noticed the loudest people, and every time I say the people that speak up are the loudest people, I think of myself. It's like, yeah, Blaze, you're doing a YouTube channel. You know, you're making these videos and you're talking about your own thing. So aren't you doing the same thing? Aren't you trying to put on these airs of wisdom and trying to show the world how pagan you are? No. And yes, but no. I'm trying to have conversation because I enjoy conversation. I enjoy teaching and I enjoy learning. And I'm trying to make it clear, too, that I don't really consider myself pagan. Even though most people would label me as a pagan, I consider myself spiritual. I don't like religion anymore for a lot of the things that I'm complaining about. What is there really to fight over or die over when it comes to religion? It's an interpretation that someone wrote down. There's no repeatable instance of proving. You can't prove to me that God exists. You can't prove to me God doesn't exist. It's a belief in something that you are going through with blind faith. And the only reason that you know about it is because the idea was implanted in your head by society, by your parents, by someone told you about it, gave you a book, listened to a lecture. People are continuing to regurgitate this information about this being that's supposed to exist that you can't prove that exists. That's why I keep coming back to this idea that everyone's talking about the same thing. They're talking about some form of a divine being that is all-encompassing, and people are interpreting it in their own way. With the cultural thing that I was talking about earlier, and I think ego comes into play here as well, because people get very full of themselves when they talk about their culture, where they come from, or the people they come from. Even when people join a new spirituality, a lot of people wear that new title of I'm a born-again Christian, or I'm now a Norse pagan, or I'm Wiccan, and they wear that like a badge of honor, like this is who I am, and I've joined this, and I need everyone to know. And not everyone gets loud about it, but a lot of people do. A lot of people get very loud about it. But there was I was having this conversation on TikTok, and I was mentioning the fact that religion is not a political platform. You don't have to be of a particular, wow, that's not even a word, a particular political persuasion to follow a particular path. And I've noticed there was a trend of individuals, and they were yelling at people, basically pushing the idea, and I did a short here on YouTube with it too. They're pushing this idea that you have to be a Democrat or a liberal in order to be pagan, because those are the free thinkers that are open-minded and blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. You can absolutely be non-political at all. You could be a Republican. You could be a hardcore Republican and still be a pagan. They're not the same thing. And people try to force this idea into other aspects of their life. What you are and what you believe at the core drives who you are. But your personal path in spirituality, regardless of the religion you claim or follow, isn't the only way to do it, right? You can have a pagan who just acknowledges the wheel of the year. You could have a pagan who doesn't do the wheel of the year at all. You can have a pagan who does the major national holidays of whatever country they're in. You'd have a pagan who casts spells and wears robes and makes their own wands and staffs. But then you'd have a pagan who literally just wears crystals on occasion and drinks on sacred days that have to do with the seasons. Like, there's this variance on how you do it. You don't have to be of a particular political thing to be of a particular religious thing. You can follow your own path. I think a lot of people want to be right. It's a lot of ego and don't like being questioned. I agree. And especially when you talk about religion, because you're talking about something you have blind faith in, right? You believe this in the depths of your soul. You have to be right. You spent years studying and reading these books and following this path. How could you be wrong? Accepting that you're wrong is also accepting that you wasted your time, to some. I don't think it's a waste of time. I think learning and considering things is not a waste of time at all. And I'm speaking as someone who has spent years looking at different religions and spiritualities. I used to use labels. I used to call myself different things throughout the years and try to find what fits me. And I realized nothing does. I'm me. And there's no other me out there. And that's fine. That's why I'm going back to the core practices, the roots. Where did this come from and why? Why do I believe in what I believe in? And if somebody else believes differently, I accept that and I move on. I don't get violent with them. Now, I will try to correct people, and I will try to share information with them when they say something that's factually inaccurate, but I will also do it in a way that opens a conversation instead of shutting them down. And I think that's the difference here, is so many people weaponize what's been written down and they try to act like this is the only way. They use this as an excuse to enact violence on other people because this is written down. You have to read it this way, and this is the only way to interpret it. I was listening to some people talk recently through a live, and they were arguing over how you read the Bible. Like, one person was talking in this live about how the Bible condones, not condemns, they accept slavery. And they were arguing, no, God's against slavery. And the Bible talks about how you treat your slaves and talks about rules for beating your slaves. And they're like, well, it's not really the word slave. It actually translates more to something like servant. You own them as property. That's what we call in today's society a slave. And they're arguing over what the words mean. So this great big book that you're willing to die over and hurt other people over, you don't even know what it says. It's an interpretation of the words that are written in it. That's some scary stuff. You have some people going to war, fighting and harming other people over a thought, and they don't even know if that thought isn't being interpreted right. In fact, that has started wars and fights before, is because people are reading the book, a book, doesn't matter if it's the Bible, doesn't matter if it's the Quran, doesn't matter what religious text it is. People are arguing over the proper way to read it, to understand it, to worship it, and they're hurting each other because they don't agree, because they're not on the same page. People get so convinced that they're right. They get so convinced that their interpretation, the way of looking at it, is the only way to look at it. I actually had my mind blown recently. One of my friends, very, very nice guy, dude would like give you the shirt off his back. He just goes out of his way to make sure people are comfortable, not at the expense of himself or his family, because he puts them first, but he really is a genuinely good guy, and apparently he's a Southern Baptist. I have no problem with it. I don't care what religion people are, as long as you're not a dick to other people. You believe whatever you want to believe. Don't agree with his belief, but I respect it. I respect how serious it is about it, and I respect how kind he is to others with it. I was talking to him because I read a passage in a Bible recently. I was having a discussion around how the Christians believe there's one God, and I've made this argument before, that they believe specifically in Yahweh, a specific God, and there was multiple gods, and Yahweh had a wife, Asherah, blah, 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 blah. There's this passage about the creation of man in Genesis, and it specifically talks about we creating them in our image. It's and I could look it up, but I made a different video about it at some point. I might even did a live about it recently. But that interpretation of, well, who's they and who's we? And I asked the Southern Baptist, and he said to me that, oh, it's the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's the Holy Trinity. So why is God referring to himself as a Holy Trinity and speaking to himself as if he's a group of people in one passage, and then the very next passage he says I and my? Like, why is he going back? Why does he jump around like that? Why would he only have that one aspect in one part of the book? I don't want to argue or debate it with him, but then he shared something with me, and this guy has been born and raised Southern Baptist, like his whole life he's been this way. And he mentioned to me that he's not read the whole Bible all the way through. I was shocked. I assumed he was one of those individuals that has read it cover to cover and has reread it to reinterpret it. I've also had other individuals. My uncle was a promise keeper, apparently what they called them. I forget which church it was with. But he got really into the Bible. He used to do Bible studies, and they would do Bible readings once a week, every week. And they would reread it over and over and over and over and over again. And he mentioned to me that the reason that they would reread the Bible is because you get new insight and glean new things from rereading the words and reinterpreting them. So again, even with someone who's very religious and very devout, there's interpretation. So how can we take something that's can be interpreted or twisted or changed or possibly written down wrong because we're translating it to different languages, and that literally be the central focus of how we interact with other people? Like, if we're taking it to a positive way, that it's neighborly and protective of culture and society, fine. But if we're taking it to a point of, you have to read this and interpret it the way I do, or we have a problem, like, what goes through someone's head? How do you rationalize that to yourself or to others? That you genuinely want to end someone or harm them for not believing in your current interpretation of something you're reading. I don't understand that line of thinking. Then it also got me starting to think, too, that even though I had tried to defend Christians because I think they're being unjustly targeted, again, you shouldn't target any religious group. I started realizing that there's probably a lot of people out there who has had firsthand experiences of people who, in the name of their religion, Christianity or others, has targeted them and treated them differently, poorly, maybe even violently. I like to think that people can elevate themselves and think outside the box and treat people as people first. You react on people based upon how they treat others and their actions, not what they personally believe. But not everyone's like that. A lot of people fall into the trap of getting violent. We've seen this recently with politics, with the whole Trump and Biden thing that's going on in the United States. People gotten so angry because of how much they dislike those two presidents that friendships were ending. Family members were not talking to each other anymore because they're so focused on this is the only right way and the only way of thinking about this. People, like, when did people become so sensitive that they can't even have a conversation anymore? That you can't just converse and agree to disagree? I mean, we're people, right? We have interpretations, and as we live our lives, we might change our mind. We might see new insight, get different theories, get different ideas, and have new perspective. But now we hear something and we don't like it. We instantly shut down the conversation. We reject that person. I don't get it. Any of you have answers? Any of you have ideas? Do you know any religious fanatics, or have you had run-ins with individuals who took either their political stance or their spiritual stance, shoved it down your throat, or got uppity with you over it? The populace has been conditioned to play team sports and have a tribalistic us-them mentality. It's like mass brain training has occurred. That's actually a really good point. People do get caught up in that swept of that mob mentality. That's a really good point. And it's unfortunate. Rabbis say that the OT is misinterpreted in Hebrew Virginia Hebrew virgin just mean young woman, not how Christians see it, Virgin Mary. I see a lot if Greek paganism and Christianity. Yeah. That's another argument that I've had. So, I don't think there's any separation between culture and religion, and I think that's one of the problems that we have when it comes to people being so fanatic, when it comes to spiritual beliefs. Like, here in the United States even, our spirituality is very much ingrained with our culture. And people have mentioned it before, like we have Judeo-Christian values here in America. I mean, I guess I could see that. I would actually just call them human values because, whatever. I'm not, it's Christianity, and I don't really partake in that. But I was going somewhere with it. Oh, but when we adapt and try to do something different and learn something new, we take with it our culture. So when we have people who today were not raised pagan, even if they were raised pagan, and they go to paganism, they're going to take an element of Christianity with it because of the type of society they grew up in. You're going to see those influences. It's impossible to avoid. You grow up a certain way, your society acts a certain way, and it impacts your way of doing stuff. Look at some of the spiritual groups out there that are calling themselves pagans. They're literally worshiping and acting just like Christians with different names for the deities. You even see pagans that are jumping over to Norse paganism, right? They back in the early 90s, they might have called themselves a Wiccan, and now they're jumping over, I'm a Norse pagan. They're doing the exact same things the Wiccans were doing. They're just calling different gods, and they may have a different symbol. They might have a Mjolnir around their neck instead of a pentagram or a pentacle. People take pieces of themselves with it. Kind of what both of you were saying, like Fadis talking about this tribalistic us versus them mentality. Yeah, people absolutely do that. And they get on this bandwagon with attacking. You see it when, like, people that are Christian, you see them get very angry with non-Christians. That's common. Not everyone does it, but it's common. And then people who were Christian before and they jumped over to paganism are all ready to fight on the opposite side. They're like all geared up, ready for war. They rip their patch off, jump the fence, put on the new patch. They're ready for war again, going against the exact opposite of where they were previously. Now we got to attack the Christians. So they literally are doing the exact same thing they were complaining about. They're just re-aiming it to the new target. See that in politics, see that in everything. And very much in us versus them mentality. I really hit the nail on the head. I really agree with that. Yeah, a young woman would make a lot more sense. I mean, I've argued this point before, too, with the Virgin Mary. It's like, she was married. They would have, you know, on their wedding night, they would have consummated the marriage. Can't tell me Mary was a virgin. Bullshit. I mean, societally speaking, culturally speaking, bullshit. I thought a altar was just a Wiccan thing, but I've learned Catholics also have altars, a lot of similarities. Yes. A lot of different spiritual groups have altars. An altar is just like a sacred space to put stuff to honor something. Like, I think in Hinduism they call it a puja, but they have like a table where they put little trinkets and stuff dealing with their deities and things like that. And I've argued this before in many things, that a lot of what people are calling modern witchcraft and Wicca is straight up a borrow from other traditions. Like, it's not built out of ancient Anglo-Saxon practices that have survived throughout the years. It is a duct tape together amalgamation of different spiritual practices that feel like they fit together. And in some cases, maybe it is from a cultural root that has grown into something else, but there's just too many practices that they claim from other traditions, and it's clear they're from those other traditions. Yeah, I remember, because I was raised, like, and I think I mentioned this in our videos, I was raised Roman Catholic. I remember going into the church, and I remember them wearing robes. I remember them having an altar and burning incense and chanting. I remember them having a staff that they would walk up to the altar with, and they would put it into a little, they would either hand it to an altar boy or put it into like a staff holder. I can't remember which one they did now. And there was this one moment in this pagan bookshop which I had joined, and they wanted to try doing libations, basically the exact same thing they do with the wafer and stuff in Catholicism. And they literally were taking bread that they were blessing to the gods, and everyone was taking a piece. It felt like a Christian ceremony because, again, people go back to what they consider to be spiritual. I mean, the same thing could be argued. People say, well, oh, Christianity has pagan DNA, because the way people practice spirituality doesn't fully change. What is a spiritual practice is a spiritual practice. It's no different than when you show love and affection. You give someone a hug, you give someone a kiss. That's how you show affection. This is how you honor divine beings. You have a sacred space, an altar, that you put stuff that represents what you're trying to connect with, and you put either offerings or something that you are going to help as a conduit between you and what you're trying to connect to. That's just what you do. So when you're pagan, maybe it's nature, maybe it's one of the pagan gods. When you're Christian, it's God. When you're something else, it's something else. You know, it transitions with it. But that's how you be spiritual, and how you be spiritual is a learned condition from your society. So I understand why so many different practices and spiritualities are doing things in a similar fashion. Talking about religious fanaticism, as we have holidays coming up, right? Different holidays, people are like doing this huge thing, put Christ back in Christmas. Why? If you have Christ in your Christmas and that's what you believe in, then go do Christ in your Christmas. Which is one of the reasons why I don't do Christmas, is because Christ Mass. It's not me. Winter solstice. All of the stuff we're doing for Christmas is winter solstice stuff. Could I just do Christmas because the rest of the country does it? Yeah. Do I need to be a little butthole and say, oh, it's not Christmas, it's winter solstice? No. Do I anyway? You betcha. Is that ego? Yep. But, again, what I do in my own household and what I do personally is my business. I don't make a big deal about it with other people. I used to get really persnippety with people. And anytime, Merry Christmas. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I hope you have a Merry Christmas. That was my response. Long-winded, unnecessary, and just causes unnecessary division. We don't need to be super sensitive of everyone's emotions and feelings. When someone says Merry Christmas to you, they're intending goodwill towards you. And that's okay to have goodwill and to work with people and accept it. People get too caught up and hung up on the specifics. There's no reason for that. And I don't think most people are fanatics. That's the type of Christians that I'm defending. That's the type of pagans I'm defending. The people who are not fanatical. But you'll see fanatics in any religion. And I don't mean the extreme of what we've been seeing lately. I'm talking about subtle microaggressions that build up over time, that are unnecessary, that are just not needed. And you see them from both pagans and Christians and other religions and faiths as well. I think we need to help people learn to get out of the deep tribalism and respect other beliefs, to ask questions about things rather than presuming to know it all. Completely agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why I like conversations like this and seeing different perspectives and giving an opinion to think about. I'm not trying to dictate or tell people. I'm trying to get people thinking. Sharing my thoughts. Just vlogging. Just getting a couple insights out there to consider and to think about. And I might look at these videos down the road in the future and be like, huh. Never really thought about it that way. But I did it one time. So even though I don't think it that way anymore, I did it one time. Why'd I change my thoughts? Or, hey, what I was thinking back then I don't agree with at all anymore. Wow, this is an old video. Cringe. I've had that happen before, too. But yeah, I think the best thing is going to be conversation. Just start talking and just start opening your mind. People get triggered when you question their beliefs or what they think is true. Or if you show them evidence that what they believe is not true. And it's unfortunate. If you are so caught up on your way of thinking that you're ready to dismiss conversations and people and get moved to violence over your belief, then maybe you should be questioning your belief more than you should be questioning the person that you're attacking. Like, I have opinions on things, very sensitive topic things I have opinions on. I'm still willing to hear other sides. We'll hear them out. Where are you coming from? Why do you feel this way? Okay. Let's agree to disagree and move on. Me and my brother have had a lot of disagreements lately. He's very politically very different from myself. Spiritually, there's some similarities, but not a lot. He also moved away from Catholicism when he was a little bit older than what I did, but he moved away from Catholicism, and now he's very anti-Catholic. He's very anti-Christian because of all the stuff that he's seen. But aside from moving away from that and looking into some of that stuff, and we like games and some books and martial arts and things like that, we have things in common. Politically, we're very different, night and day. Completely different. And instead of letting that ruin our brotherhood, we try to move past it and just try to avoid that conversation. Or if we do talk about it, which I like to do, is like, just hear me out. I'm not trying to convince you to change your mind. I'm just trying to say what's on my mind. And likewise, I want to hear his thoughts. I want to hear why he thinks the way that he does. Like, what makes you think this particular candidate is better than this candidate? Why do you think these actions are acceptable, but those are not? I think he's hypocritical, but I still want to have the conversation even with that in mind. I want to hear these different viewpoints. I also think it's weird that people want to hold generations accountable for previous generations. You don't just see this in religion. I'm talking once more about this recent stuff in Pakistan and Israel. I don't know all the details, but it's like they're justifying their horrendous acts of terror based upon the people they're attacking, saying that they did it to their people in the past. It's like, these exact people did it to your people? Or are you holding a generational grudge, which was taught to you, that you hang on to, and use it as an excuse to act violence later? You see it in other regions too, in other spaces. Ray Cheesy says, atheist turned spiritual here. I believe all religions worship the same source. I also have religious trauma, so that's how work through it. That's how I've worked through it. I really enjoy these lives because I don't have a lot of people to talk about this stuff with open-mindedness. Most people I know are Christian, Protestant, and others couldn't care less. Ray Cheesy, welcome to the live. Welcome to my channel. I have a very similar thought. I'm not an atheist myself, but I agree with you. I think all people are worshiping the same thing. I use the term divinity. I don't know what else to call it. I think there's something there, and I think throughout human history, we as a society and people have interpreted it in different ways and written down different nicknames to attach to aspects of something that we can never fully understand. And I think that at the end of the day, it's just a different view on the same thing. I've got a really cool mountain theory video if you want to check it out, which kind of covers how I kind of view how different paths can still be looking at the same source. But I could agree with that. I really enjoy these lives. Yep. And I like having these lives for the fact that I used to just make videos, but I'm trying to get more interactive. I used to go to psychic festivals and pagan gatherings and stuff, but the older I get, the more I'm disliking some of those groups. I feel like a lot of modern pagans, and this isn't everyone. There's some good folks out there. I've actually there is a YouTube channel called Pagan Coffee Talk. There's some pretty cool folks, and there's this other one. Jay, if you're still here, what's your YouTube channel called? For whatever reason, I always have trouble remembering what your channel is called. Cauldron Brew. And both of them have some really cool open discussions. Now, obviously, they come from particular paths and traditions, and that's fine. But they seem more willing to have an actual discussion, and they're willing to back things up with historical evidence. And if it is a personal interpretation, they say it. That's refreshing. You don't see that a lot anymore. So many people get on this whole high horse of, oh, I need to get away from mainstream Christianity and I need to change it up, and they like lose the human aspects of it. Sorry, I'm getting messages. I'm trying to make sure it's nothing important. But yeah, no, I enjoy having the conversation because of getting the feedback, the live interaction from the chat. I don't want to just make videos and pre-think of an idea and then present it as if it's fact. Because the more and more I read about this stuff, the worse it is to me. I have this old video where a ton of people corrected me on it. I used to say Anglo-Saxon instead of Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Saxon. It was a mispronunciation in a single video, but it's forever out there. And I'm not going to take it down because it's part of my journey of sharing with other people. And I like this idea of, like I said, I like this interaction. I'm still going to do videos. I'm still going to do shorts. But I've actually kind of, like, what do I make a video about at this point? I've actually gotten fatigued from making videos. That's why I've made less. Because it's like, what am I going to regurgitate from books not knowing the origin or source of? Something happened like 2 or 3 years ago that I need sources now. I'm tired of repeating and regurgitating, and so many people do that. I don't want to be a mindless religious fanatic to the point of, I'm going to believe everything because it was written down here in this exact spot, and this is true, and it has to be true, and therefore it's true. I can't do that anymore. It just doesn't fit right for me. Hey, Louie, how's it going, man? Good to see you. Svek, how do I recommend an account review? Hey, Blaze, what do you mean recommend an account review? Redeem, not recommend. Redeem an account review. I can't read. How do you redeem an account review? Oh, are you talking about Marvel Future Fight? Well, that's completely, that's my Twitch stuff. This here is my spiritual channel. Sevik? Okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure. I thought it was like Svek. I Sevek. And if I mispronounce it, I'm sorry, that's my attempt. But yeah, for Marvel Feature Fight stuff, there is on the stream, when I'm streaming on Twitch, there is a section on there for you to redeem your channel points. And then it will have a drop-down list of what you can redeem on. Hey, I got back from shopping, but I got a party to go to in a little bit. Always like listening to you speak about your passions. Oh, welcome back. And yeah, no problem. I'm definitely glad to see you here. Bro, it's Rookie. I've told my name so many times, you always forget. Oh! Yes. Yes, I do. Sorry. You don't get on here on this account very often, okay? I'm sorry. I apologize. I know who you are now. I remember now. I remember our conversation, too, in Discord. But yeah. What's the current topic you're talking about? So, started with religious fanaticism, right? So, basically, the idea of it doesn't make sense to me that you're so fanatical about your religion that you're willing to harm other people. There's been some recent stuff in Israel and Pakistan with that whole stuff going on where 100% acts of terror. What they had done is an absolute evil, tragedy. It's horrible. Completely condemn it. But how can you target people based upon religious viewpoints? And then I started getting into the whole idea that basically everyone's believing the same thing anyway. They believe in the same deity. They're just interpreting how they interact with it. And why? How do we know? How do we know? How do we know anything religiously speaking is right or true? And are you really going to act violently towards other people because they don't believe the same thing you do or don't interpret things the same way you do? I feel like we should treat people based upon their actions, not what they believe in, what they enact upon. Wait, did I not say it right? Oh, it's Palestine? Ah. Wow. That's going to be fun. Okay. Yeah, there's some stuff going on with the news. I don't have any idea where it's at. I don't know what started the fighting. All I know is the stuff that was done by the terrorist organization was absolutely horrific. And people should speak out against people attacking others for any reason. Like I just... The fact that people are defending the actions over there is what was getting to me. And I just... Yeah, wanted to point that out. But that's fun. Because I'm going to leave this live up, so me saying the wrong country, that's always fun.
What country did you say?
Thought Pakistan. Apparently it's Palestine.
Yeah, that's correct.
Two completely different places, nowhere near each other, probably. Hi, Clea, you're back. Hi. Hello. How are you? What you doing? I always thought about spreading love in whatever form it comes, right? They get so caught up in... Why are you biting my ankle, Sully? Ugh, I'm getting assaulted by dogs. Yes, I know, I know. Hello. Hi, Gypsy. Ugh. Okay. Okay. Let me get caught up in what I'm saying here. They get so caught up in being right and correct that they lose sight to the more important things in life. Right! Ongoing issues for the last 70 years. That was one of the points I brought up too, Louis, is the fact that it's like, I had heard that people in Israel, their soldiers had done horrible atrocities to the Palestinians. But aren't those different people? Like, why are we generationally passing down acts of violence? So it's like, if the people... So first of all, those acts and the things they did are horrific and unacceptable and non-justifiable, period. But to take it in a different direction, if for some twisted way you try to justify that to yourself, aren't the people that are doing these acts doing it to different group of people? They didn't do it. Why are you holding people responsible for something their ancestors did? I don't understand that mentality. Treat the person for what they're doing, not what they... Like, even where they're living, you know, like, you're just associating and grouping people together. You're targeting this idea, and people are suffering for this. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all. It's funny because Solar would call me Pakistani, and you'd tell him off for making that joke, and you just said Pakistan instead of Eastern country. I've heard in a couple in the news, I've heard the name of the terrorist organization, and for whatever reason it slipped my mind. I don't talk about Pakistan or Palestine at all ever, and this is the first time that it's come up because of the recent things that have happened over there. So I made a mistake. I am only human. UK's
God forbid you say the wrong word.
UK's fault for why it started? Wait. Why is it UK's fault for why it started? I've never met religious radicals like that serious that I felt in danger, but I do get a lot of Christians that kind of judge or look down on anything not Christian, but they've never looked into history. See, that's more of the interactions that I have had previously, is the judgy, preachy looks. I've never ran into anyone who was going to be physically violent with me over spirituality. So my viewpoint is skewed because I've never been face to face with something like that. But I know it's out there, and I know people do that. But I don't want to react and respond and assume everyone of a particular religion is the same way because of the acts of a few.
There's crap people in every religion, period. Like,
You can join the conversation. My wife said there's crap people in every religion, and I agree with her. I absolutely agree.
you're always going to have radicals in any type of faith, culture.
It's
Because humans are stupid.
It's Hamaski? I thought they were called Hamas. I mean, I personally am in support for the freedom of Palestine, but I don't support the terrorism of Hamas. However, Israel has done so much wrong to the Palestinian people for the last 70 years. Right, and I mean, that's kind of the general idea and the point that I'm getting to. That, yeah, I don't know the details about what's going on. I have heard stuff about them being pinned down and basically in prison without walls, basically, and that's what they're celebrating, that they're breaking free. But there's a right way to go about things, and there's a wrong way. Like, you can't tell me women and children helped their cause in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Like, there's lines, and I feel like those have been crossed. Acting in a way that is that horrific isn't justifiable. What they were trying to do in a very horrible way is a separate conversation. What they actually did is what people should condemn. And I know there's a bigger story of everything that's going on over there. I don't have all the details. I don't know what's going on. I've heard snippets in the news. But it still inspired me to think about the fact that there are literally people over there, and you said they've been fighting for 70 years. Or there's been stuff going on for 70 years. And it's all based around them separating two different distinct cultures. So there's different religions, there's different cultures, and they're using this as an excuse to hate each other. Like, why is it Palestinians and Israelis? Why is it not just people? But they have these very distinct, different separations, and they're using it as conflict and fighting and who's right and who's wrong, and they're getting stuck behind it. And I don't understand that mentality. And again, maybe it's because of how I grew up, because I've never seen it before. Maybe it's because I'm a freaking mutt myself, because I have such a mix of different countries that my people came from, including recent people came from. But it's like, I just don't get it. I don't understand that, doing that to other people. I don't know. Palestine is next to Israel. Yeah, I couldn't even point them out on a map. You could give me a world map right now, and I couldn't point them out to you. Either country. The militant infestation of Israel into Palestine still happens. It's not in the past. See, though, I don't have all those details, and there's probably more that I can learn about what's going on over there. That is what inspired the idea of talking about religious fanaticism. That wasn't necessarily the main topic of the conversation. I don't mind talking about this by any means.
Game, like that you're talking about this?
No, I'm doing my YouTube live.
Oh, okay.
It's not in the past. It's still an ongoing issue. The media has just suppressed it because the U.S. is very ain't Muslim and didn't want to bring light to it, and because the U.S. has a big Jewish community. Angus, welcome to the stream. Hello. The more I have delved into paganism, the more I have thrown away what seems to be propaganda and use more of what are facts. That's good. A lot of people that get into paganism get really caught up in the trend of what's currently popular in neo-paganism, and they kind of fall victim to the same thing that they were falling victim to with Christianity, listening to just hearsay and not going to research the facts themselves. Some people jokingly call paganism the religion with homework, and not everybody does the homework. They just read one book or listen to one person or just make it up as they go along, and unfortunately causes a lot of conflicts in the community. It's okay. It's just that you said Pakistan, which is what Solar does all the time. Whatever I bring up, something like a Middle Eastern country or my country, they call it Pakistan. They both started with a PA, and it's the first thing that came to mind. I misspoke. I made a mistake. Here's the thing about Palestine and Israel. My country, the first Christian country in the world, is torn now because we were at war with Muslim Azerbaijan that was supported and armed by Israel. So we have such good relations with Iran, but we are Christians. Did not know that. It's not just Christians. Even a lot of so-called pagans are the judging type and refuse to do research into their self-proclaimed traditions. Yes, Jay, completely agree with you. And that's one of my personal frustrations and one thing that I like to challenge. And I'm trying to do it in a polite way. At the end of the day, what you do, I don't care. It's your business. You can believe whatever you want. If you want to believe complete bullshit, believe complete bullshit. I just get frustrated when I see so many people misspeaking. So I'm trying to do more lives, videos, shorts, where I'm sharing resources and discussing things. This particular live is just an opinion live. Just sharing thoughts and opinions. Trying to put out there this idea of think about how you interact with other people. When you have a particular spiritual path, how far are you taking it? Are you going too far? Are you so focused on your path and how you think it's right that you're willing to stop talking to people, push them away, shut them down, yell at them, get angry at them, or even violent? Some people do get violent over belief. Why? Step back for a second and really think about what you're doing on your path and how you're treating others. That was the point of this live. And now I think it's become something else, which I like. I like that it's organic and it's growing. What country are you from? What I'm saying is that religion, although an aspect, is not the biggest cause. And that's fair. That's fair. I was not, and that's why I was saying the topic here is religious fanaticism, but it's become something different. I was inspired with the fact that you had two very culturally different groups. And something I said earlier in the live is that I personally view religion and culture as almost the same thing in a way. I don't think you can pull culture out of religion, even though you could have culture without religion. I think that there is an essence of how people interact and view world and society. That's why I think that you can't separate morals out of religion and your culture. People say, and I've said this before too in this live, they say that the U.S. was founded on Judeo-Christian values. And I personally view it as we were just found on values. They just so happen to align with Judeo-Christian values. But that means everything that you see in our culture and our country, even if it's a different religion, is going to have an influence from that Judeo-Christian mindset. So even though it's a cultural U.S. way of viewing things, you see the religion inserted in there. That was my comparison. So you're right. It's not an exact comparison. I'm not saying what's happening right now in Palestine and Israel is specific because of just the religious aspect. But there is a there has been conversations in news. I shouldn't even say news. Clips of news through media such as YouTube and TikTok, etc., where there has been clips of people having conversations about how that terrorist organization was specifically targeting Jews. Now, even though Jewish people are kind of their own culture as well, it's people in the U.S. think of it as religions first. So they were thinking of targeting a specific religious group. And the whole fanatic idea is beyond religion. It's anyone can be a fanatic. They can be so focused on their own way of thinking, their own lifestyle, their own view, their own culture, their own country, their own organization, that anything outside of it gives them cause to act in inhuman ways. They have tried everything, Blaze. I mean, Israel committed a war crime a few days ago. Both sides are right and wrong what they are doing. Very common trait of wars. Yeah. Wars are disgusting and unjustifiable. Not really any right to a war crime. What a sham wife isn't even watching to support. Joking. Rookie. Answer me. Armenia. Middle Eastern country, or... So I think geopolitics dictate relations, not religious beliefs. Fair. Fair. I have no idea. I call it South Caucasus. Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan have closer ties with Israel, although all being Muslim. Armenia is, like I said, first country to adopt Christianity, but has good relations with Iran, Russia, and growing. Closer to France and EU. When my parents lived in Saudi Arabia, I noticed that their government promoted religious extremism to the point of having religious police. Was not aware of that. It's kind of ironic. Scholars say pagans in history were henotheistic, so they could add in deities to their pantheon and rituals from others. Now it's like you got to be strictly one thing. I can kind of agree with that to a certain point, that some people do have that mindset. I think the problem comes down to the self-identification. So if someone's just calling themselves generally pagan and they're adapting, that's one thing. However, people are making this very bold statement of claiming a specific label. In some cases, we're talking about labels that have been dead for generations. In other cases, we talk about labels that have been translated to modern words, which, for example, is, some people call it spiritual, some people call it religious. There's an argument over it, but its origin root word is an Anglo-Saxon word that's not pronounced the same way, so it's a modern word. Same thing with Druid. Back in the day, the people that we called the ancient Druids, they didn't call themselves Druids. Druid's a modern word. So you have words like that, but people put these labels on themselves, like Druid, Witch, Wiccan, Norse pagan, or Celtic pagan, or something. They label it to put it into a box and a framework. So when you go outside of that box and framework without clarifying that you're drawing from other sources, now you're no longer falling into that box. So why are you using that box term? So if you want to call yourself, for example, if you want to call yourself specifically a Norse pagan, so you're saying, I'm focusing on the Norse stuff. If you are worshiping deities that are outside of the Norse pantheon, or you're doing practices that are outside of the Norse traditions, which they're so scattered and broken up, it's not possible to practice what the Norse people did back in the day. It's not. We don't have enough information. It's gone. The closest we can get is mimicking the cultures in those regions today, which is far removed from what people are attempting to do now. So now you have two problems. You're calling yourself with a label, but you're not practicing when that label is referring to a time period. You're not practicing that. There's countries today that are descended from those people. You're not practicing that. And you're mixing in from other cultures. So I think that's where the disconnect comes from, in my opinion. Hey, Pagan Coffee Talk, good to see you. If you've already talked about it, I'm late to the conversation. But do you know of any pagan religious fanatics? Yes-ish. Not to this extreme. So it depends on how extreme you get it. And this is one of the points that I was trying to bring up, that I find that there are some people that get so focused on their version of their own paganism that they get violent with other people, to the point of verbal arguments, not necessarily physical violence, but verbal arguments. I've seen people get super heated over it, yelling and screaming and actually angry. And to me, I would still put that into the category of being a fanatic. And they will do this over the nuances of how to practice, what deity. You see a lot of this. There's even like, here's a great example of an extreme case. So you have modern heathenism, Norse paganism, whatever you want to call it. And you have a branch that was started here in the United States, which was called Asatru. Asatru is not an English word. It's not an ancient word. It's nothing. It's a modern Icelandic word pronounced with an English accent. But Asatru in America is far removed from the revival reconstruction movement that was started in Iceland, called Ausatru. Ausatru and Asatru, spelled the same, are different paths completely. The way that some of the folks that do Asatru in America, there's different organizations. One of them is called the AFA, the Asatru Folk Assembly. They believe that when you practice, you are practicing ancestral worship with a cultural tradition that it's part of your ancestry and heritage, which means if you're not of Scandinavian descent, you can't practice with them. With them. They're not saying you can't practice, you can't do your own thing. You can't practice with them. They have rejected people who are clearly, visibly, skin tone wise, didn't look to them as if they were of Scandinavian descent. This caused a lot of people to get very angry and call them a racist. So how true that is, I don't know. I don't know enough about them, but I've heard enough of the arguments and debates over it. They claim, well, this is like a family tradition. Like, we wouldn't invite you to our family get-together if you weren't part of our family. So this is how we practice. So if you want to practice with us, this is what you have to do. Everyone else is attacking them. So there's this argument back and forth. There's actually a document, I can't remember the name of the document, where a whole bunch of people signed an anti-thing against it. And then there's the whole thing of, is it cultural appropriation or is it not? So there's that huge thing. So I think that's an example of religious fanaticism on both ends there, of the two sides butting heads and arguing and fighting over in such extremes of, this is how you practice, period. And if you're not doing it this way, you're wrong. I also see this with something that you would be a little bit closer to home with you. Look at the old guard versus the new guard when it comes to Wicca and witchcraft, and how you're supposed to practice, and how some of the initiation ceremonies that you needed to do in order to get into Wicca back in the day compared to what people do today. And people will fight and bump heads over it. Oh, you're not a witch unless you're specifically initiated. And if you're going to be initiated, you have to be initiated into a specific tradition, and you have to be initiated in this exact proper way, and there's degrees, and you have to have a master and a coven that you're part. There's specific stuff that you have to follow, and not everyone will necessarily attack others, but they'll get aggressive and angry over it. So I think that there are some examples even in paganism, and I've also noticed that there are some pagans who literally become as bad as the Christians that they complain about. So I've met a lot of really good Christians. They don't care. They don't care what you do. They really don't. But I've also met some Christians that are just like, if you're not Christian, they're down your throat. If you're not Christian in the right way, they're down your throat. Oh, you're a Protestant? No. We're Catholics, and you have to do it this exact way. Well, you'll see this inside of some of the circles when it comes to paganism. They'll switch over, and they'll instantly, I hate all Christians because of what they did. And all Christians are the same. And their fanatical mindset of Christians are bad and Christians are evil because of their own personal experiences with a couple Christians. So they're holding all Christians responsible because they're Christian. So yeah, I think there are examples in every religion, every culture. I think there's examples of fanaticism, in my opinion, from my observations. Where did I scroll past your comment? Where did you delete it? Nope, it's right there. I like chicken, although the one I ate today was a bit odd tasting and I might have a mild food poisoning because I feel a bit funny. Why do I put this here? Because you spend a lot of time reading everything. Thanks. Thing we write. So I thought it would be funny. So yeah, how was your day? Also, we didn't hear your wife's opinions. Pagan Coffee Talk. Hey, Brigid Well, good to see you again. I personally think there are pagan fanatics, not about their religion, but rather about enforcing their politics. Yes. And I think it's to different degrees. And that's the other thing to keep in mind, too. People want to connect themselves to the pagans of the past. The pagans of the past absolutely slaughtered and killed people over religion, land disputes, and cultures and stuff like that. That absolutely happened back in the day. Today, no, I have not heard of pagans doing mass wars or acts of violence like you hear from other groups and organizations. But back in the day, sure. And I think there's other degrees of microaggressions and violence that pagans are 100% responsible for today on a regular basis, happening right now even around the world, guarantee it. We have a lot of pagan gatekeepers on the internet. Hiding behind the screen seems to exacerbate this behavior. Yes, so totally agree. And whatever happened, and I know I already said this in this live, but since we have more people in here, whatever happened to just having a conversation? Why do people get so offended and up in arms over a single comment? Can't we just agree to disagree, share information? If it's an opinion, say it's an opinion. If it's a fact, back it up with documents. Oh, you're saying that? What are you basing that on? Well, here's a book. This book. I'm basing it upon this writer or author. Oh, I saw that in this documentary. I saw this on this creator's video. Share where it comes from. It's not that hard. It's really not. Why can't we argue and fight the debate and the discussion, the topic versus the person? People make it personal. If they have someone saying something they don't agree with, they attack the person instead of attacking the argument. And I don't get that. It doesn't help. I think maybe a lot of pagan fanaticism comes from organized religion with one book and one way of doing things. But I don't think historically pagan beliefs wasn't that organized. People traveled. I don't know. Because if you think about it, think about regionally speaking, right? Because the term pagan is a very loose word that we use as an umbrella term today. Obviously, it comes to us from Latin. What, paganus? Paganus? I don't know how it's spelled. Or pronounced. I don't know how to pronounce it. But basically, it meant country Joe or rural folk. So there was no pagan of the past. It's a term that was slowly adapted as Christianity started to go on a rise. Anyone out in the country who didn't convert yet, that were doing their earth-based nature things, you were pagans. And that's why most people use the term pagan today. Most of us know this. But look at the groups that today modern neo-pagans draw from. Yes, there were some groups, Celtic tribes, right? Talk about some of the Druidry stuff, Druidism, Druidry. The Celtic tribes traveled, but those individual tribes probably had a very specific way of thinking. Look at indigenous people. Individual tribes, Cherokee, Sioux, Blackfoot, they have individual practices that their spiritual group believed in. So even if there was an adaptation, there was still one way of practicing. There was a spiritual group to go through. Then look at places like Rome. They had temples to specific gods and deities you would go to learn and practice. So it was very much a very set way of practicing. So I personally believe that even back in the day that still existed. So I don't know if I completely agree with the assessment that there wasn't as much things locked down as there are with Christianity. Because even with Christianity, as I've mentioned today, you don't have one Bible for all of Christianity. I can give you a link right now if you want that has a whole bunch of different versions of the Bible. They're very similar, but they're different. There's like 20-something different Bibles. Even though it's supposed to supposedly be the same book, there's still versions of it. Then even if you take those, you have different denominations. You have different church groups. You could take the same denomination, two different church groups, and they might do it slightly differently. So even in Christianity, there's going to be some variance from practitioner to practitioner. And in my personal opinion, I think that that is very reflective of how the different groups that we would call pagan in the past would have been. There would be some variances, but there would still be a core unifying general way of thinking that was culturally driven, I think. Pagan Coffee Talk. Agree completely about the conversations. You know where we stand on initiation, but we have never said one has to believe one way even after initiation. Right. And I'm not accusing your group of being fanatics. And I think there's a fine line between truly believing in your path and forcing it and causing violence with others. Fanatics is kind of an extreme label that I would not put on most people. But I have witnessed others arguing vehemently to the point of violent or shutting down or just closing off the conversation, which is not what you do. Your entire Discord and your entire YouTube channel is about opening the conversation, the complete reverse of what I would consider a fanatic to do. But they will shut down, demean, belittle, and verbally assault people for not agreeing with them that are pagan, because this is how you have to do it. And come on, you've been around the block. Can you not think of any fellow individuals who have also practiced some form of Wicca or witchcraft that have gotten to that point of violently arguing with other people, even if it is just verbally assaulting them over they know the only way and their way is the only right way? Those are the ones I'm referring to. And yes, maybe fanatic is a little extreme word to use for people like that, but those are the only examples I personally can think of when it comes to talking about pagan religious fanatics. And I think they're harmful for the community as a whole. I really do. So, this has been a fun conversation. Even though it's kind of weird. I keep trying to go back to the topic. Oh, we have an agenda. We need to stay on the topic. I like to open conversations. Keep the comments and questions coming. Maybe next time I do a live, it'll just be an open live, and whatever topic the first person brings up, we'll just roll with it. I would like to actually get these scheduled regularly, but as I was saying at the very beginning of this video, I've been doing Dungeons & Dragons as a dungeon master on Saturdays. Today the group canceled, so I figured I'd do a live real quick and then eat for the first time in the day, because I haven't eaten all day. I recorded an audiobook, streamed a video game, jumped on YouTube. And my poor dog wants to play.
It's raining right now.
I know. Which means my brother might not be coming up for sword practice, so I will check with him in a few.
It's supposed to start again too, so.
Fun. No yard work.
Yeah.
All questions and thoughts are welcome here, as long as you're not being outwardly violent or dismissive or rude to others. But if you want to share your points of view and your thoughts on this topic or topics similar to this, feel free to just share your thoughts in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If not, since we've been going for about an hour and a half, I will probably wrap up the video shortly. But these end conversations here, love the interaction. So thank you all, every single one of you. Appreciate it. And met some really good people. You going live next weekend? At the moment, I'll probably be playing D&D next weekend. I really want to set up a normal cadence, but I'm having difficulty balancing that out with everything else I do on Saturdays. I can move it to a different day. I just don't know what's most convenient. And right now, for me, it's been right after Marvel Future Fight stream on Twitch, I go right into this. But now I'm going right into D&D. Something I could probably do is talk to the D&D group, maybe push it by about an hour, and then I would just shorten this to a time box. So this would always be on Saturdays for 1 hour and cut it off at a specific time. What do you think makes someone change to the point of becoming fanatical? I don't think everybody becomes fanatical. If you're specifically asking what do I consider to be the divide between just being very religious and being fanatical, I think the zealot mindset of, in my opinion, the zealot mindset of building up aggression and anger towards others who do not believe in your way of viewing it. That's what I think makes someone fanatical. That anger, acting on it in any way, shape, or form is like probably the final piece, whether that be, again, yelling or shouting or shutting down conversations. Let's clear some things up, though. Let's look up the fanatic definition, and instead of me making assumptions. So, fanatics, a person marked or motivated by an extreme, unreasoning enthusiasm as for a cause. A person affected by zeal or enthusiasm, particularly on religious subjects, one given to wild and extravagant notions of religion. a person affected by excessive enthusiasm, particularly on religious subjects, one who indulges wild and extravagant notions of religion. So I think my definition closely matches that enough. So again, I think if somebody is going to get so focused on this is how you do this religion, it's the only religion that's right. Because I have met people who are pagan and they think everyone else is wrong. I've tapped into the true divinity of what God and Goddess are, or the gods and gods are. I know what they really are. These silly Christians are so blind and stupid and foolish. Okay, that's a start to being fanatic, not quite there. But now they know and they trust and they're willing to do extreme things to get this power and spells and connect with their deity. Now we're getting a little bit further. Now, if you don't believe in it this way, you think you're of this pagan path, and you're not because you're not doing it the right way. I've done this, that, and whatever else. Therefore, I'm more of it than you are. And then taking it to the next extreme of starting to shout and yell at people, shout them down, protest, and go out and attack and affect people. I think that's when you're starting to get into the fanatic territory. So again, when I mention that, I'm by no means suggesting that even though you mentioned some of the things that I was giving an example with fanaticism, having some of those traits does not make one a fanatic, in my opinion. I do not consider your channel or any of the people I've met with your group to be fanatics in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I don't think anyone that I've talked to here in this chat today that I know, some of you are brand new, you might be fanatics, I don't think anyone in this chat is a fanatic at all. And like I said, when I tried to give the example, I tried to give the example of the AFA because of the extreme arguments that have happened online over the AFA of whether or not, you know, this is how you can practice or can't practice. It seems to happen more often in religions where the mindset is ours is the only way. Yes, I agree with you. Completely agree with you. In fact, I think that's at the core of it. I think that when someone is so consumed with their path being the only right path, that's what leads to fanaticism. Because if your path is the only path, now you need to do something about it for everyone who's not on the right path. Either convert them or remove them. And yeah, that's where we get some touchy topics. I feel like I can't decide between Norse and Celtic pagan pantheons and culture, and I like both. But for some reason, I feel like I got to pick one or the other. I keep going back and forth thoughts. I feel the same way because of my cultural heritage. I'm not going to go over my bloodline again. I've gone over it in many videos. But basically, I am descended from both Irish and Icelandic. Very closely. My mom was born in Iceland. So both of those appeal to me because for me, it is a cultural connection. I didn't choose. They both feel right, so I went with what feels right. The thing that becomes difficult with pantheons, and here's where I start showing my spiritual side. I'd mentioned I don't label myself as pagan anymore. I consider myself to be not religious. I consider myself to be spiritual. One of those reasons is because I don't think we know anything. We have no way of knowing, in my opinion, we have no way of knowing the Norse pantheon or the Celtic pantheon the way that the people who wrote down stories about them hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago did, because we were not there. And we have not had enough written down about them to keep it alive. So we have a shadow of what those beings might have been, which is why I shift my mindset to think of divinity and the masculine and feminine aspects, which would be the gods and goddesses, and to be more generalized with the term. When I use a specific focus, it's because there's an appealing thing in today's modern culture that feels right to me. For example, Brigid. 100%. Since the day I first started looking outside of Catholicism, I found Brigid. She has felt right, and I have honored her as a goddess ever since. The imagery behind Brigid is strongly in Irish folklore to the point that it survived into Catholicism with Saint Brigid. So everything that we have Celtic Irishry related in today's society is a reflection of what Brigid might be. So that's how I found what made sense to me, because it felt right in every way, shape, or form. It felt like home. It was part of the culture. It was everywhere I looked. That's what helped me to find what worked for me. So if you don't have a particular deity or image of divine, right? So there's divinity. If there's not a specific image of whatever you want to call it, don't worry about it. I think divinity will hear you anyway. That's my opinion. But if you do have something that really speaks out to you, I would do a little bit more research. You will find that a lot of the Norse pantheon are pretty evil and twisted beings. They're very human with their motivations. Maybe evil's not the right word. And a lot of the stuff that I've read on the Norse pagan Scandinavian stuff, sagas and eddas and interpretations from historical people like Dr. Jackson Crawford or any of the other ones out there, William R. Short, you will find that the Norse pantheon is usually representations of raw forces of nature itself. And you will find some pretty horrific stories of some of them. Odin, for example, has both inspiring and what stories out there. Like, seriously, he did what? So keep that in mind. So that alone, reading some of the sagas and eddas, or even listening to some of them through an audiobook, look for actual good interpretations and translations. I like ones by Dr. Jackson Crawford because he takes religion out of it, focuses just on the translation and the linguistic piece of it. So I feel like that adds something to it. The philology specifically behind those words, it adds something, so you can look at what was written and come up with your own thing. The Celtic ones might not necessarily be raw forces of nature. They might in fact just be fae or fairy creatures, potentially. The Tuatha De Danann, the children of the goddess Danu, were said to have come to Ireland and traveled there and fought the Fomorians who were already living there. And then apparently the Irish came after, and it is theorized that potentially one theory is that the Irish killed the Tuatha De Danann, and they were buried, and they went into the fairy mounds. Now they're higher fae of that other realm. So they might have actually been living people. They could have been beings. They could have been otherworldly beings. They could be fae creatures. We don't know. Or maybe when the Irish came over, they retreated into the fairy mounds on their own to like give room for the humans coming over. I don't know. There's a lot of different ifs, ands, or buts about it, but we don't have a specific creation story in the Celtic stories. There are two that are out there that they were made by college students. So if you bring up the horse with the river and stuff like that, and Kiernunos from the tree and things like that, I'll show you where that was originally written. I've got sources for you. I've got receipts. So technically speaking, a lot of the stuff, like with the Irish, right? They started looking at the Tuatha De Danann as saints. All the Tuatha De Danann are there. Kiernuno, Saint Cornelius, Brigid, Saint Brigid, Saint Bridget. It's like very, very close. Those saints reflect them very, very closely. So I would look at stuff like that. But I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that you need to feel like you need to limit yourself to one thing, especially if it's cultural and you're part of both cultures. Why do you need to pick? If it's not part of your culture and you like it, why do you need to pick? If you're drawn to multiple cultures that are not your own, who cares? If you're inspired by it, go with what feels right. That's my opinion. I know, that's a long-winded opinion. Man, I need to shut up. Comments. We don't feel you have to choose. Take what you need from your spiritual growth and leave the rest. If you're showing respect, it doesn't matter. Completely agree with Pagan Coffee Talk right there. If you want to view it this way, think about it this way, right? You live in a modern world. Back then, you only could listen to what your tribe or clan said or somebody told you who was traveling. So you were limited to your view based upon the people you're around. Now you have the internet. You have the entire world at your fingertips for the most part. You have a lot more exposure. If you were making a staff to walk with, doesn't need to be a magic staff. You're making a staff to go hiking with. You want a strong, sturdy staff, or maybe a shaft for your spear. You, if you were in Scandinavian lands, might use the ash tree. It was a great wood for spear and for walking. But if you now found out that there's different types of trees across the world, and now you have modern day and you can order the wood from over the seas, why do you need to pick a specific tree that relates only to one region of the world? Why don't you look and mix and match? Maybe you have a staff of oak and a wand of yew. You know, maybe you have a wooden shield that you use later made of ash. And maybe you have all three. Why do you need to pick? If you have, I mean, why do you need to limit yourself? I feel like it's the same way with the deities. It's different. If they're all interconnected, which I believe, they're all different aspects. Find the representation that feels best to you. And if it's 3 or 4 from the Norse pantheon and 1 or 2 from the Celtic, so be it. Feel what's right for you. And like Pagan Coffee Talk said, just show respect. And at the end of the day, unless you're like me and like, hey, I follow Brigid, unless you verbalize that they're peoples, they're never going to know anyway. And it's none of their business even if you do tell it to them. It's your business. It's between you and that deity. You don't need, in my opinion, you shouldn't need confirmation from other people. Same as a heritage thing for me. Also Norse, Dutch, Scottish, Welsh, German. Fair. Luckily, some of those have some similar pantheons enough to do that they look like you could pick out of 2 large groups and still be okay. And some Native American. Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, Dutch is my heritage. That creates an identity crisis which influences me to research further until exhaustion. Yes, Angus, completely understand. All right, I'll do it again. My mom was born in Iceland because my grandmother, generations born and raised in Iceland, Icelandic. My mom's dad is first generation American because his family came over here from Czech. So Czech Icelandic, I'm sorry, on one side. My dad, his mom, first generation born here because her parents and older sister came over from Italy. So now we have Italian. And then my dad, it's back 1 or 2 generations, but they came from Germany and Ireland. So Irish, German, Italian, Icelandic, Czech. Yeah, mutt. It's, if you live in America, which I assume both of you do, it's the condition of being in the melting pot of the world. We're all the peoples. We're all the peoples. I don't think it's indecisive to honor both and keep it open-ended and let your practice evolve over time. I agree with Brigid well. Absolutely. 5 actors have won the Darth Vader suit in the Star Wars movie. 5 actors have worn. That's a RN. Have worn the Darth Vader suit in the Star Wars movies. David Prowse for most scenes in the original trilogy of the movie. Bob Anderson as a stunt double for sword fighting scenes in the sections and third films. And The Rise of Skywalker has always been provided. The Rise of Skywalker has always been provided by James Earl Jones in the movies, although other actors have played the voice of Vader in radio dramas and video games. Hayden Christensen in Revenge of the Sith, and both Spectre Wildling and Daniel Narpris in different scenes in Rogue One, his voice to date, including a voice cameo. I know. Infernal greetings and salutations. Hello, Kelvin Fraser. Welcome to the live. How are you? I can't figure out how to play Doctor Strange, but his damage at level 80 seems really nice. The OG voice is the best. If you look on my tutorial, I've got plenty of videos out there on how to use Doctor Strange's rotation. So
we're talking about Marvel Future Fight on your YouTube channel?
Yes, that's what he does. Civic is jumps in and does random. He just talk about Darth Vader too. He will jump in and throw in random stuff. He even does it on my stream with Marvel Future Fight. He will randomly talk about stuff not Marvel Future Fight. It's what he does. But we accept it. I answer it. Regardless of what people say, I acknowledge it, and then we move on. Anyway, the Dusty Dud, I hope that helps. If not, if you have more questions, you have a nice group of folks here that are sharing their thoughts and insight as well. This is what I like about the live chat, because don't care who you are, myself included, we don't have all the answers. But if we talk and discuss things together, we might be able to figure out some things as a group.
Have all the answers.
Okay, my wife has all the answers. Awesome, I keep bringing it back. Why, you ask? Because Blaze reads absolutely everything, and that's hilarious. Apparently he does it specifically because I read everything, and the fact that I'm literally going from talking about which pantheon is acceptable to worship or honor all the way to Darth Vader. I'm African American with some Caucasian blood because my grandmother on my mother's side is biracial. Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of different people with a whole bunch of different mixed backgrounds. Nothing wrong with that. You might not have all the answers, but I have all the questions. Not even all the questions. Thanks, Blaze, and chat for feedback. Good points. Absolutely. And again, at the end of the day, I like saying that. I say that a lot. At the end of the day, you need to find what works for you. So as long as it feels right, follow that inner voice. Something inside of you is going to tell you if it feels right. If it feels off, look for something else. But if it feels right, go with it. That's my suggestion. The only person you need to answer to is yourself. Thanks, Blaze. You are welcome, Civic. All right. Caught up on comments. I will wait a few. Since, like I said, we're at an hour and a half, or actually hour 40 minutes. Grassland G! He made it. I'm always looking for the right questions. Right? I can understand that. It's been a productive day with 2 productive streams. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. So even though I said Pakistan instead of Palestine earlier. Sorry. So sorry. Yeah, I'll acknowledge it. I said it wrong. I was completely incorrect. Said the wrong freaking country. They are countries, right? Are they countries?
Yes, they're.
I live in my bubble. Bro, stop mentioning it. Why? It's literally recorded and will be out there forever. I don't delete my lives. I make mistakes. I acknowledge them, and I'm not going to hide behind, you know, I'm going to delete it later. I'm going to edit this video and make it sound like I know all the answers. No, I'm human. I make mistakes, and I'll own up to it. The live stream is refreshing to me. It is good to allow a free flow of ideas and discussion. Thank you, as it seems as though you are about to wrap things up. I am. Because I've been streaming for about an hour and 40 minutes, I try to wait until the chat starts to slow down, and then I say, okay, there's no more questions. I'm going to wrap up the stream. Either way, both Pakistan and Palestine ain't doing great. Slowly going away. Blaze, when you say deities are connected, can you go into more details? Yes, absolutely. And then I'll read the additional comments here. So when I say that I feel like the deities are connected, my personal thought is when we think of spirituality, humans are trying to connect with whatever created them, whatever force is out there in life that is not physically tangible. Why do we exist? What is the soul? What is awareness? What is that light that goes out in our eyes when we pass from this earth? There is this other realm of existence that we don't have the foggiest idea of. And the only way we can tap into this is through blind faith. We trust something inside of us, some sort of an inner voice that allows us to believe that there's something there. This spark of what makes us alive, this spark of what goes out when we do pass, that look in the eye. You can see eyes that are alive versus eyes of something that passed away. You can see it in every animal, every being. I think that spark is a divine spark. I think it's connected. I think each one of us have no separation. I think there's an interconnection. I think that's why we feel differently in a crowd of people. You can feel emotions build up because of there's this connection. There's this viable vibration of energy everywhere. This expanse, I think, is this divinity. I think this is tendrils of whatever is out there that we don't know. And we tap into aspects of it. You know, that's why we have a deity that's associated with healing or with thunder and lightning. And we see aspects of this and we associate these names with it. Oh, thunder and lightning and storms and this raw power of energy from the sky. Thor, Perun, Zeus. This connection to this name, to this energy, to this vibration is part of world and existence. And then there's other aspects that go into all the other deities. So I feel like existence is interwoven and interconnected. So, and I feel like this is what I'm calling divinity and divine. I think Christians call this thing God. I think Muslims call it Allah. I think modern Jedi call it the Force. I don't know what they would call it. I think some of the indigenous tribes might call it Great Spirit, but I don't know any of the indigenous tribal practices. So I don't know if Great Spirit's a translation or does it justice.
I've heard the Creator more than anything.
My wife says the Creator. The Jehovah Witnesses call it Jehovah, or Yahweh. You have the Freemasons, they call it the Architect. So there's this connection, and I think that we're looking at it from our different views, and that's why we get different names. It's kind of like the Earth. If you're describing your environment, right? Like, let's say everyone got on a phone with you one at a time from all around the world, and they describe their environment to you without modern reference, and they tell you what they're seeing. You're going to have different descriptions, but every single one of those people are describing the Earth. And I think it's the same way with divinity. I think there's this divine essence that we're tapping into aspects of, and that's the different pantheons. That's my opinion. Sometimes I think the different groups and cultures around the world are referring to the same pantheon, the same being of a different name. You see this in Greek and Roman. Like, almost every one of their deities are almost the same with a different name. You can almost line them up. And you can see this in Germanic paganism and Norse paganism. Their deities you can pretty much just line up. And the Slavic deities are very, very, very close to the Norse and Germanic deities. But, yeah, that's just one view. That's my idea. That's my thought. That's how I feel about it today. Ask me in 5 years, I might change my mind. I've been on the left-hand path since 1995, and it has been 28 years. I am 51, going on 52, January 20th. Nice. Left-hand path makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It's not something I've ever dabbled in myself. But to each their own. Nothing wrong with that. Left-hand path is kind of a branch of magic that has to do with some of the darker nature of magic. It's more focused, and maybe Kelvin will have a different description that's more accurate than mine because I've only read about it. But it basically has to do with more stuff that draws personal power, and a lot of people get uncomfortable with it because of the focus on self with it. That's how I would describe the left-hand path. If you would have a different description, and this goes for anyone in the chat, feel free to share your thoughts. Pakistan had the floods, the bad relations with India. Palestine will probably be wiped off of the face of the earth at the end of this invasion. Don't even mention it. It's okay. You mix them up. My country, well, a chunk of it that we fought for 30 years got bombed and annexed, and we lost it for good this time. It's called Karabakh, yet another conflict between a Judeo-Christian country versus Muslim. We call this concept the all-in-one, the one and all. There you go. I'm sure you've heard stuff before, the as above, so below, things like that. Interestingly enough, and we can cover this in a future live, we can talk about different type of magic practices, but a lot of people have this misassociation with a pentagram. They think, oh, if you're doing a pentagram, I'm not going to reach and grab my necklaces. If you have a pentagram, right, the point needs to be up. And a lot of people will swear up and down, and it's a pentacle because it has a circle around it. But the pentagram, with or without the circle around it, they say the point needs to be up. It's important. You can't have the point down. That's a satanic symbol. It's not. It's actually a pagan symbol as well. Well, modern neo-pagan, because again, I don't know the sources of a lot of this stuff. I know the modern stuff that's repeated in books. But one of the things that they talk about is with working with the pentagram, specifically with there's invoking and evoking, but the pentagram with the point up represents the 5 elements, and the circle represents eternal balance and harmony. So you have like earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. The point up is spirit. And it's also supposed to represent a human with their legs spread to the side, their arms spread out, and it's supposed to be like your head, your 2 arms, and your 2 legs. Inverted, a lot of people associate it with Satanism, which is weird because they also associate it with Baphomet, who is the god of the night, or god representation of the Knights Templar, which has the two horns up, the two ears down, and the chin down, and they usually have the goat head on it with the inverted pentagram. But the inverted pentagram is actually an invoking symbol as well, where it's taking the four elements, and the bottom tip is representation of you because you're drawing the four elements into yourself. So there's actually different associations with that as well, which is absolutely wild to me, and a lot of people don't think about it. But again, talking about the all is one, one is all, I've not heard it phrased that way, Pagan Coffee Talk. Thank you for sharing that. But it's this whole idea of, in modern paganism, there is a very big view on this is the universe in existence, and how is our relationship and interaction with it. And I bring up the invoking of the four elements because that's all of existence, that's part of you, and you're drawing in the power of all. There is I don't remember which book it was. One of the books talks about, I think it's my Grimoire of Shadows by Ed Fitch. But they talk about Iao. E-A-O, which is supposed to be the masculine, the feminine, and the neutral, which is like, in between. So all of existence can be, you can use this sound and chanting Iao for part of your meditative trance stuff, because it's about connection with all things. So again, there's a universal connection with a lot of modern neo-pagans, because again, they think about the earth and nature as being an extension of themselves, and they're part of it. It's inside of them and it's outside of them. So it's very fascinating when you start talking about spiritual belief. And that's why I don't understand. You want to harm other people? Like in the whole pagan mindset, the neo-pagan new age mindset, we're all interconnected. If I go and I hurt you, I'm hurting myself. If I say something rude and mean and nasty to you, I'm doing it to myself, which also plays into our threefold law. Whatever he sends out comes back to you times three. Do unto others you have do unto you. I like to describe it, when you send stuff out or you send energy out, it's kind of like we're a pipe, right? Let's say you're a plastic, what do they call those pipes? PVC. You're a PVC pipe. Your whole body. You're made of a network of PVC piping. And your brain is where all this stuff pours through you. So whenever you do magic, it comes out of your brain. So there's a huge bucket up here, and everything else is PVC piping. You dump water, cleans out the piping system. It's good for it, nourishes what you're sending out. That's sending out positive vibrations and energy. Dump acid into it so that you can squirt someone with negative vibrations. What do you think that's going to do to the PVC pipe? It's going to tear it up. What you send through you and channel through you affects you. That's why, again, you think of this positive thing. But if everything's interconnection, everything's interconnected. So when you're trying to send out vibration and energy, it is affecting them in the way you intend, but it's also affecting you as it gets to them. Interconnected. What'd I miss? Stream Blaze, DDD connection. My country, we call it the one. It happens last month. Some wars go unnoticed. Blaze, stop snacking on M&Ms. What are you talking about? Blaze, kind of similar how on Abrahamic religion, it different views and theologies about the same deity. Yes. I really do think the Christians are worshiping the same beings as the pagans are. It's just a different name for the same thing. I really do. And I find it's true because of the scripture. Because I like to research different things. So I look at some of the Christian Bibles. I mean, they talk about us being created in God's image. They mention that. And it's funny because that's that comment that I was saying. It says that we create in our image. Who's the we if there's only one God? It's in the Bible. I'm telling you. It's in Genesis. I can give you a freaking verse if you want me to look it up really quick. But it says we in our image, when God created mankind in his image, it actually says we in our. And I think someone from my channel actually confirmed in their translation in their own language, it also confirms as we and are. But we have men and women, and we have different body shapes. We have different ethnicities and skin tones and eye colors and strengths and heights and tastes. If we're this diverse as a human race, what does that make God? What if it's plural? Man and woman. If not, you can't tell me God is like a human man, like a lot of Christians seem to depict God as. God is a concept beyond that. So again, I think we're worshiping the same thing. I think we're just giving it a different name. Most people won't agree with that, but that's my opinion and that's my view on it. Blaze kind of so yeah. Did that soft polytheistic concept originate with theosophy? Theosophy? I don't know what theosophy is. And what do you mean soft polytheistic? I know I've heard the term soft polytheistic and hard polytheistic before, but I can't quite remember. Inverted pentagrams for us is also a symbol of second degree. Well, there you go. Sorry, I don't mean to post twice. My internet has been messed up lately. You're fine. Responsibility to the responsible. Anton Sandor LaVey in memoriam. Yeah. LaVey Satanism. So just don't use PVC pipes. Simple. Well, it's an example. It's an analogy to kind of give a description of sending out affects who's doing the sending as well. It was just an analogy. Socrates believed that it was better to be harmed than to inflict harm on others, mostly because harming others damages one's souls. Yeah, I could see that. It's a common theology in modern polytheism. I don't completely agree with it. In fact, I love this old, and I don't know if it is. Okay, I heard a saying that they claim was a Buddhist saying. So someone once said this was a Buddhist saying, that a Buddhist, talking about a Shaolin monk, a Chan Buddhist, they would not harm people and they would not cause violence. They would simply refuse your offer of violence and give it back to you. That was the whole essence of their Chinese Kung Fu, their martial arts and their self-defense. So that's an interesting concept. I completely 100% am down for self-defense and protection. I'm not going to go out of my way to harm other people, but if you come at me with violent intent, I will meet you with violence, and I will meet you with more violence because I'm going to be the one walking away. Or at least I'll do everything I can to be the one walking away, because I am human and people make mistakes. But I don't know. Then again, I think we have a moral high ground we try to achieve. We don't always succeed. I made an attempt, and I'm sorry! I made an attempt to be a vegetarian. I shouted sorry to my wife because she had to live through it. Made an attempt to be a vegetarian for, I don't know, a year or two. And I tried it once before, long before that, for about a year or two as well, and I never made it too far. It is very, very hard to stick with a specific diet. I also made the realization that even though, like, oh, I want to be a vegetarian because, you know, poor animals and how they're treated before they're slaughtered, and, you know, why can't I just live off of the earth? And then there's all these counter arguments to that. Well, the plants are living creatures too. The animals are going to be dying whether I eat them or not. And if I take my natural essence of what my body is, it is made and designed however it was created to be an omnivore. So I'm denying part of the nature of what I am. So why can I be more selective about what I eat or the quantity that I eat or show respect when I do eat it? So it's like there's all this different stuff. There's actually, again, there's this Chan Buddhist, the Shaolin guy, and he was talking about how he's a vegetarian because that's how they are with the Chan Buddhists, but he mentioned that it's not that he wouldn't eat meat, he would just not choose to eat meat. So if somebody offered him meat, he would eat it because it's a gift and he wouldn't want it to go to waste because it was put in front of him. But if asked, he would ask for the vegetables. And it's like, whoa, that's like, it's mind-blowing because people get so focused on, but this is what you do and how you do it. They don't think of adapting to the situation. See, now I got off on the side tangent. Where were we? Grassland G, thinking about the inverted pentagram like that, I am reminded of Algi's rune. Right, yeah. And I don't remember why. I know that there is both ways in modern interpretation of the runes, because it is not historical, of using the runes in different type of magical practice and inverting the runes, or using them for readings and having inverted meanings, which again, all modern practices. But there was also, I think, a linguistic reason to invert some of the runes too, that they used it linguistically as well, and we see examples on this on some of the rune stones where they have the whole thing scripted out. So But anyway. Funny, I also tried vegetarian diet. Well, I just... Moral high ground, what can I say? I love animals. Animals are awesome. We are animals. People try to think of humans as separate from animals. Nope, we're animals. But that was not something that I could stick with, especially in today's society, because there's so many things that have stuff in it, and I actually suffered health-wise from trying to be a vegetarian. And since I have reintroduced meat to my diet, I have actually, even though I'm still obese, I have been healthier as far as my levels go in my system. So I don't feel as weak or sluggish or drained as often anymore. So, okay. 2-hour mark. Comments are slowing down. I will wrap up the video here. I want to thank every single one of you for not only taking the time to hang out with me today, but having a really cool and open conversation. This goes into my live section. I do try to have lives more often. I want to get back to weekly lives. I am not doing weekly lives at the moment. But definitely have plenty of content to go look through if you want to check out some other stuff on my channel. I have tried to be a vegetarian a few times. It was too hard for me to do that. Instead, I eat more healthy as I leave a lot of food out of my diet. Right. I've done the same thing. I've kind of restricted it. Like, I will eat... At first, when I reintroduced meat, it was just fish. And then it was fish and chicken. And now it's fish, chicken, and beef. I don't eat pork because I've never really been a fan of it. And I refuse to eat certain conditional things that I consider to be cruel. Veal and lamb I will not touch because I don't think that you should eat baby animals. If you do, it's on you. But I personally don't want to do that to myself, so I don't. So, yeah, I try to be more selective about what I consume, but I still open up my palate to be more accepting. Just for the simple fact that I'm human, and my body does better when I feed it multiple things in a well-balanced diet. So, anyway, thank you all. You have yourself a good one, and may your path be a fruitful one. Or a meaty one, however you eat. It's a joke at the end.